I just quickly wanted to say thank you to everybody for leaving the comments. It's been crazy here in Texas. The heat, the job, the COVID, life, all that kind of stuff. And we don't have central air, and I'm only trying to take over this one room of the house and not other rooms. So it's got to be dark and it's got to be cool for me to make these. So I'm sorry it's taken so long, but thank you all for sticking around. Thank you for your comments. I love that so many people are sharing their experiences with Frank and hopefully spreading the love of the music, especially in the crazy times we are in. Music really is the best. So thank you all very much. I'm going to stop talking. On to number 4. Later in this video, I eventually say that Farther Oblivion was last played on this tour, the August to September 73 tour that number 4 documents. To the best of my knowledge, it was played once and only once on the following tour, the Fall 73, the Roxy Halloween 73 tour on October 26th. After that, it was no longer played, at least on any set list I've seen, and just the Bebop Tango as a live entity would remain. But anyways, okay, on to the review. What's up, people? Thank you for watching my channel. My name is Shaggy, the opinionated and recently somewhat lazy but completely overworked hippie. And I'm currently ranking and reviewing every single Frank Zappa album released after he passed away in December of 1993. I'm doing it slowly, unfortunately, due to the aforementioned being overworked and somewhat lazy, and COVID just causing chaos, but I'm getting there. And out of the 55 I deemed rank worthy and review worthy, we are on number 4. Remember, these are my favorite. There is no objective criteria. This is a completely subjective list. We're on number 4, Road Tapes Venue 2, which is essentially Helsinki, Finland, August 1973. This release came out in like 2013, I think it was. Yes, Halloween. It is 2 discs, all from the same venue in Helsinki. And much like You Can't Do That on Stage Volume 2, which is kind of the similar band, which is about a year and a month later after this show, September 74. It's not a complete concert, but it is all tracks from the same venue in the same run of shows. In this instance, the 23rd early, 23rd late, and then the 24th of August. So over the course of the 2 discs, you get songs from each of these shows. Only one of them, Farther Oblivion, has an edit somewhere in it, or has many edits somewhere in it, in which it's more than one show for one track. You know, only one song has been completely franked, where you go from this show to this show. Every other song seems to be in its entirety and seems to just be this song and not like bits and pieces from the 3 shows. So it is a very good sample of what a 1973 late summer 73 set list looks like. This particular band only toured for a month. It was essentially the same band that had been around since spring of 73, but Sal Marquez had left. And so it's just the same band from earlier without Sal Marquez. I'll discuss who's in the band in a second. And if you look at a set list from any summer 73 of this month, all of these songs appear a lot. The only thing you're really missing that appeared quite a bit was Inca Roads. The early version of Inca Roads was that like cocktail lounge, jazzy feel, plus a Cosmic Debris. A couple other things were played, but really this is the bulk of what you would get at any show. So it's a good representation of this band. And this is a phenomenal band, an incredible band, one of Frank's best. The core of this unit would be together for all of 73 and 74. And that core is Frank Zappa on guitar and vocals, George Duke on keyboards and vocals. On this particular month-long tour, Duke and Zappa are the only vocalists. So I think you get a lot of instrumental stuff, probably because of that. And then George is sort of forced to like sing Village of the Sun, which he does a good job. He sings Inca Roads, not on here, but elsewhere. He sings something else on here that he normally would maybe not sing. Maybe that's it. Maybe it is just the Village of the Sun. Oh, and it's parts of Brown Shoes Don't Make It, which is the encore number. So he's doing a little bit of that. And, you know, you could tell he's not the best singer in the world. So you get George Duke on keyboards and vocals. And then the rhythm section, you get Tom Fowler on bass. Tom Fowler is, I think, sort of like the Phil Lesh of all of like Frank's different bass players. I think a lot of what he plays, like sort of the patterns he plays in, are much larger, like longer, and like a Phil Lesh style, where he's not just thinking about this little bar here, but he's thinking in terms of like song structures and stuff like that. He's definitely not as funky, as shamelessly sort of just rhythmic as O'Hearn. He's chaotic at times, but not quite as frantic as Barrow. He's exactly what you need every time you need it. He's just amazingly perfect. And the mix really gives him a lot of spots in here to sort of like step up and just shine. And those were the only three that were there for every single show of 73 and 74. For all of 73 and part of 74, you have Ralph Humphrey on drums. Humphrey is a little more chaotic like Kaliuda and Wackerman. Definitely not as sort of rock-oriented as Spazio, but just absolutely an amazing drummer. You get Ruth Underwood on percussion. She was here for almost every tour except I think the May Mothers 74 10-year anniversary tour. She wasn't there on those run of shows. Other than that, she was there for this entire 73-74 span. Absolutely amazing. And then for the beginning of 73 up through the end of this tour, at which point Jean-Luc Ponty would leave, you have Jean-Luc Ponty on violin, who is insane on this tour. I kind of thought in the earlier in 73, a lot of his solos had that sort of volcano solo mentality, a term Frank used to describe Alan Zavod in 84, in which, you know, the solos would start like bubbling and then build and build and build and then just kind of erupt in a volcanic frenzy. I think Ponty was a little more like that in early 73, but by this point, he's just exactly the soloist you want in a Frank band. Just really interesting every time out, aggressive, noisy, just kind of all over the place in the best way possible. You get Bruce Fowler on trombone. I don't think I need to sing the praises of Bruce Fowler. And then you get Ian Underwood on synthesizer and all kind of crazy like electric. I think there's an electric oboe or clarinet on one of these. It's just this really funky low but then high solo that he gives on Don't You Ever Watch That Thing that is just like possibly the highlight of these two discs. But just an almost perfect band. I don't know how this band could be any more perfect. So that is this band. And they're amazing. And then these are the songs that are played in this band. So let's break down why this is such an amazing 2 CD set. Also, the sound is phenomenal. Not only just the quality of the sound, but like if you've watched my other videos, one of my favorite albums is You Can't Do That on Stage Volume 2. My favorite band is that Fall 74 band, so I've listened to them a lot, and a lot of this material was played on both that album, Stage 2, and by this band. And just to hear sort of the difference in tempos, the difference, like George Duke will have different keyboard sounds in different parts, just the way the different instrumentation works with Fowler and Underwood and Ponty present. Just even these songs that I've heard hundreds, if not thousands of times, sound kind of fresh and exciting and new because it's, you know, sort of the same painting but with different colors or different, I don't know. So 13 tracks on the first disc. You get intros in the beginning. Then you get a run of songs, bunch of instrumental songs, most of them relatively short, but they create not necessarily this tension, but they have this weird sort of restraining quality about them that by the time we get to Redunzel and Frank's Redunzel solo almost sounds like, I am free! We get to like just jam for a while. Oh, I am so happy. After this incredible run of like tightly composed songs. So you get the Eric Dolphy Memorial Barbecue, about a minute of that, just like the written parts, no improv. Kung Fu, which was recorded by this band, and I think there's a version of it on the Lost Episodes. But it's a song that almost sounds like it could have been part of Eric Dolphy to begin with. It fits right in there with that sort of vibe and feel. That goes into Penguin in Bondage. No solo section in this. It's pretty much just the lyrics. You get Exercise 4, which was eventually released on Meat Light. It was recorded and written during that. So it has Uncle Meat, Dog Breath themes in it and leads very nicely into Dog Breath Variations, Uncle Meat, and then all of which sound amazing. And then Redunzel. And this is not the Redunzel of Stage 2 or 82 Stage 5. This is a really frantic, in-your-face, upbeat, get-going redunzo from the get-go. And when we get Frank's solo early on, it really does just seem like Frank's like, I'm out of my cage. I'm going to run around the house now. Thank you. And he just goes. And it's just, he's not really pushing any envelopes, but he's having a really good time. And it's a really good solo. And then when he's done, you get the rest of the song, plus a pretty short little Duke solo, if you can call it that. And then the song ends. And it's just an exhilarating, shot of songs to start off this show. Then we get Montana. Great Montana. Excellent guitar solo. Pretty typical guitar solo, but that's great in this era. Aggressive, great sound. Right before they go into the guitar solo section, Humphrey has this just drum fill that kind of pushes Frank into the guitar stratosphere. Works phenomenally well. When there's no I'll ride a small tiny horse, his name is Mighty Little, but Ponty is playing that on the violin, probably accompanied by Ruth, if I'm not mistaken. So you get that as an instrumental section, but the words are not there. Then after Montana, you don't get the hook, the dun 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 ba ba, which would eventually lead us into Dupree's Paradise. Instead, Montana just kind of fizzles out, and then Frank goes, George Duke is now going to play a bunch of noises on the keyboards, and George Duke starts to play some, gets a little keyboard solo. It's pretty spacey. It's pretty much just George Duke. Then Frank starts conducting the band. They jam over some different types of figures, and everybody has a good time. This goes on for 7 minutes. Then Frank starts singing some of the lyrics to Pajama People. They do a little cocktail lounge, jazzy Pajama People type thing. And then they go into Dupree's Paradise proper, which is just one of the greatest transitions Frank has, the transition from that solo section, and then it just kind of I think Ruth and George both play this sort of cascading riff that I can never replicate. And then that goes into the of Dupree's Paradise. And it is really probably the best, one of the most magical 20-second passages of any Frank Zappa ever is that segue from George's improv between Montana and Dupree's proper. Dupree's proper has a really good Jean-Luc Ponty violin solo, a really good Bruce Fowler trombone solo, and an always intriguing, in this song, Frank Zappa guitar solo. I really think, as much as Frank experimented with his guitar solo playing in 70 and 71, in King Kong especially, I've always thought that Dupree's Paradise was the very first place he really started to try to push that envelope and get out of whatever box his rhythm section puts him in. This solo starts off awkwardly. Frank almost sounds like he's just tuning his guitar at one point, but it's not. It's some motif he's playing with, and eventually he finds some weird groove and takes off, and it's very 75, 76 Zoot Allurish Before the Ship Ahoy, where it's somewhat straight and narrow, but at the same time it's poking the edges and jagging and trying to go off in weird directions. I don't know. I think the Dupree's Paradise is from 73 and 74, by far the most consistently intriguing outings Frank has ever done. This one is definitely an instance of that. And then the disc closes with something called All Skate / Dun Dun Dun, the Finnish hit single. Frank says, hey, we're going to make up a piece. We're going to improvise. Sounds like Ian Underwood takes sort of the keyboard run on this, starts making noises with the keyboards. Frank starts conducting people. There is this absolutely phenomenal section where Frank starts playing what sounds like this Chuck Berry riff, this this just 2-chord riff. You could almost expect him to stand up and go way down Louisiana, down in New Orleans, or whatever the words are to Johnny B. Good. He doesn't. He just stops playing the riff and the band kind of trails off, and then he picks it back up again, and instead of coming in this hard stop every time, it trails off and then rebuilds and then trails off and rebuilds, and then finally it just takes off, and it is one of the loosest, most magical jams I think Frank has had. You compare this to the Chicago 78 Paroxysmal Splendor, and that one is also kind of all over the map, but you can feel how tight that band is and how Frank's go this way, yeah, we're going this way, no, go this way, yeah, we're going this way. This is kind of that same vibe, but just a little more relaxed and a little more looser. And you could tell we're in George's wheelhouse, and like everybody's just, it's something a little different about it, this 73, 74 band. But that closes out, 14 minutes of that closes out disc one. It ends with Frank getting the crowd to go dun dun dun, and that's the new finished hit single. And then dun 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 repeats itself for the rest of the show quite a bit, or at least in tracks that come from the 73 early show, which is, I think, a couple of these. Or they also appear the next night. But anyways, that's disc one. Disc two, you start off with Village of the Sun, Our Kin is Off of You, Don't You Ever Watch That Thing, a common sort of trio. Village of the Sun is much different than anywhere else. It starts off with this really like dun 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 intro before we get into the more standard ballady portion of Village of the Sun. The intro is also an outro between sort of the end and Akin Nazarf. The outro doesn't work. It ruins that amazing sort of jumping off into the Akin Nazarf, like dun dun dun. You miss that cool segue, but I think it works in the beginning. Kind of reminds me of like a Three's Company or like a 70s sitcom intro, or even like Bread. I think the vocal section in the beginning, there's a part where George Duke is employing the best falsetto he can, and then it gets a little funky and he gets a little funkier. That like really soft falsetto part, the slow going back home, sounds like a Bread song. If you don't know who Bread is, go to Spotify and search The Best of Bread. Best of Bread was a huge album in the 70s. This reminds me of like a upbeat Bread song, which is really slow paced for Frank, but upbeat for Bread. But it reminds me of Bread. I mean, that's a great thing. This was the era, 73. Like Frank very much may have been trying to emulate that sound. But it's a beautiful, beautiful version of this song. And again, Chicago 78 also had a beautiful version of Village of the Sun. Like Village of the Sun is a special song. I am realizing as I listen to more and more of these like live things in such short proximity. Akin is Off of You and Don't You Ever Watch That Thing sound much slower than they would eventually sound on stage 2, especially Akin is Off of You, but Akin is Off of You sounds heavier. Fowler's bass sounds heavier. That wind down at the end when it sounds like they're just chasing themselves in a circle, that sounds just a little more menacing and like has a little more sort of weight behind it, but in like an ominous, creepy way. Works wonders. Don't You Ever Watch That Thing has what may be the highlight in electric oboe, clarinet, some woodwind, Ian Underwood solo, incredible. And then we also get a George Duke solo, we get a drum solo. Then next we get Big Swifty. Other than the studio version on Waka Jawaka, which really is a beast of its own, this, I think, is hands down the best live Big Swifty out there. Better than every other Big Swifty we have, mainly because the band is so amazing and the solos just are great. We get a George Duke keyboard solo, and then we get a Jean-Luc Ponty violin solo, and then we get another just incredibly great Frank solo. And the solos, the support during the solos, whether it's Humphreys and Fowler or whether it's George Duke piano when he's not soloing, all of it works incredible. I think the actual main themes of the song sound better than they do in other bands. It works perfectly. Then we get sort of the centerpiece of the entire show, Farther Oblivion. 24 plus minutes of this. If you're not familiar with this song, this is the last tour it would be on. After this tour, Frank would play it no more. It's 3 distinct musical sections separated by solos. So the first section would become the Steno Pool Big Swifty part of Gregory Peccary. Gregory Peccary debuted in 72, but this section was not in Gregory Peccary. So later when Frank would redo Get Gregory Peccary and record it in the studio, he would add this section in the early end of the first third part of it. So you get that, then you get a really, really good Jean-Luc Ponty violin solo. Then you get what would become the bebop tango, I think, by the end of this tour, before the actual Fall 73 tour. I think they played it once, just by itself. But you get the Bebop Tango, that song. That would always have a Fowler trombone solo, and this was the section which then Frank would take the band off in all kinds of different directions and conduct them through all these kind of cool things, give a lecture on psych music and explain what the hook is, dun 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 bum bum, because every psych song has a hook, and then they play the song that after that. The drummer gets a little bit, and then they go into Cucamonga, or what would become the backing music to Cucamonga. No lyrics on this, and I do think this sounds better than the Cucamonga does, mainly because of the lyrics, which I don't think help the beauty of this song. That's Farther Oblivion, and the entire thing closes out with Brown Shoes Don't Make It, which is great to hear. Frank and George are doing all the vocals, but I think this is one of those songs that live didn't quite gel until the 79, Winter 79 tour. The version that's on Tinseltown Rebellion, I think that was the first time this song, Frank figured out how to play this song live where it didn't sound like a bunch of different parts edited together. This band does a great job. There's a couple sections in here that are definitely made for this band, but I don't think it works as well as other things. Oh, that's another thing that was played commonly in this tour that we don't have. They would play The Son of Green Jeans, King Kong, Chunga's Revenge, Back in the Son of Green Jeans as an encore medley with little solos in there. Eventually, there's versions of that, I think, on either Roxy or Halloween 73. I think it's Halloween 73. But then eventually they drop The Son of Green Jeans in the beginning and just start off with King Kong, interestingly enough. Yeah, so that's another song that would normally appear sort of in the encore spot. But we get a Brown Shoes Don't Make It, which is a great choice. Glad they released it, even if it doesn't quite hit it out of the ballpark. So that's it, man. That's my number 4. Why is it not higher, you ask? Because it is perfect. Like, there is nothing wrong with it. But of the 3 remaining, one of them is arguably the best 6-show run Frank ever did. Another one is from my favorite band that Frank ever had, which you can now do the math. And the other one is the one that I think meant more to me personally in my journey to discover Frank, other than Stage 1. Stage 1 and this one, probably the ones that mean the most to me. And plus, the music on it is incredible. But that's all I got to say. Thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, thank you for your comments. Thank you for everything. I like the long ones. I like the short ones. Yes, it is hot here in San Antonio, Austin, Texas. It is miserable, but it rained earlier tonight, and it kind of cooled it down a little. So I was able to get through this whole thing without stopping. But thank you all for watching. Be safe out there. Take care of each other. Spread the love of the music, because that's what it's about. And yeah, peace. Take care. Bye.